Money is not everything, a saying one could use before hitting rock bottom. After rock bottom, money becomes everything. Rita Stevens stared at the number on the paper in front of her. 7 digits. $3 million. Her father's debt, left behind like everything else he'd abandoned. So, what's your plan? Her stepmother demanded. Rita had no plan. She had nothing. At 23, she'd already given up her college scholarship to work double shifts, already lost her room to pay her father's gambling debts, already spent years trying to be good enough to deserve the scraps of life her stepmother threw her way. Her father, Peter Stephen, had been gone over a year. He'd married Teresa's widowed mother for money, drained it all, then vanished. Rita, his biological daughter, had been left to clean up the mess. Again. She was Cinderella, but worse. At least Cinderella's father had been dead. Rita's was alive somewhere, probably destroying other lives while she slept in a converted storage closet and waited for disaster. "I'll figure something out," Rita said, knowing she wouldn't. Her stepmother's smile was cold. "I'm sure you will." The call came while Rita was working at the diner. "When will you be done with work?" Rita glanced at her watch. She still had almost an hour left. "An hour and 30 minutes, she replied. The walk home was about 30 minutes long. When Rita arrived, her stepmother and stepsister Teresa were waiting with an impossible offer. "Teresa's been dating someone," her stepmother began. "Shawn Michael. He proposed last month." Rita waited for the catch. Her stepmother wasn't in the habit of sharing good news with her. "He was in a car accident 3 days ago. He's in a wheelchair, the poor man. The doctors say he might never walk again." She paused. "They also said he'd lost his memory. Doesn't remember Teresa, their relationship, anything from the past 5 years." "That's terrible," Rita said carefully. "Teresa doesn't want to marry a disabled man, which is understandable, but we can't afford to lose his financial support. He promised to clear our debts, almost $2 million. Rita felt ice in her stomach. "What are you asking me to do?" "Marry him. You'll get to be Teresa. As far as he knows, you've never met." "That's fraud," she tried to object. "That's survival." Her stepmother's voice turned sharp. "Your father's debts have you listed as cosigner, forged signatures but legally binding. If we don't clear them, you're looking at lawsuits, possibly jail." Rita wanted to refuse, wanted to run, but where would she go? "Can I at least see him first?" she said finally. At the hospital, Rita stood beside Shawn Michael's bed. He appeared unconscious, bandaged and still. She felt pity wash over her. This man didn't deserve to be used like this. "I'm sorry," she whispered to his sleeping form. "You probably don't deserve this, but I don't either. And yet, here we are." She touched his hand gently. "I'm like Cinderella late to the ball, showing up after midnight, no glass sipper, no invitation, just desperation and a lie." "Cinderella? That's funny, but appropriate." Teresa's voice shocked her. Rita hadn't heard her stepsister come in. "Mother sent me to ensure that you're not having second thoughts," she said, making herself comfortable on a couch in the private hospital room. Rita, in fact, was having second thoughts. But it wasn't as if she could outright refuse her stepmother's plan without an alternative to present. Teresa knew this, of course. Leaning forward, she said quietly, "A piece of sisterly advice: marrying one rich man is much better than whoring yourself to many. We both know there's no legal way to make $3 million in a month." Rita knew she was being honest. The other option besides marrying Shawn was to go to jail. Knowing her father, she would die in prison. Rita closed her eyes and made her choice. 2 days later, Rita arrived at Sean's mansion. The wealth was overwhelming. Marble floors, original art, a library that made her want to cry with joy. Her own bedroom was larger than any she'd ever been in. Sean was awake now, sitting in his wheelchair, watching her with careful eyes. "Hi," Rita said, her voice shaking. "I'm Teresa, your fiancé." "I'm sorry," Sean replied quietly. "I don't remember you." Rita spent an hour answering his questions, inventing a relationship from the scraps Teresa had provided. They'd met at a volunteering event, dated 6 months. He'd proposed simply, practically. No elaborate romance. "That sounds like something I'd do," Sean said, and Rita felt relief flood through her. She'd pulled it off. That night, alone in her beautiful room, Rita lay in an actual bed with clean sheets and her own space and cried. Not from sadness, from relief. For the first time in years, she felt certain there would be breakfast in the morning, even if it was all built on lies. The stability Sean could provide was true. After 2 weeks, Rita had become an expert at being the perfect fiancée. Her days were a simple routine, helping Sean with physical therapy, managing the household, reading to him in the evenings. The staff was kind. The library became her sanctuary. Daniel's cooking made her remember that food could be a pleasure, not just fuel. And Sean was different than she expected. Intelligent, thoughtful, patient. He treated her with respect, listened when she talked, hadn't argued when she insisted on sleeping in separate bedrooms. But there were close calls. Sean asking about memories they supposedly shared, his eyes always watching, always analyzing. The doctors had suggested she take him to revisit places they had gone together to help jog his memory. Teresa had kicked against it when Rita had mentioned it. "Absolutely not. If he regains his memory, you and I will be done for." Rita agreed it was in her best interest that Sean didn't remember his past. Instead of recovering old memories, Rita took him to new places and wove beautiful tales about what they had done there. Everything was running smoothly until one day when Teresa showed up unannounced. "I wanted to see how you're settling into my life," Teresa said, her voice sharp with jealousy. When Sean appeared, Teresa called Rita by her real name. "Rita, don't be rude. Introduce us." Rita's blood cold, but she recovered quickly. "That's my middle name. Teresa Rita. She's called me that since we were kids." Sean accepted the explanation without questions. After Sean left, giving the two ladies room to talk privately, Teresa whispered, "You're getting too comfortable. Mom wants the wedding soon, within a month. The creditors are getting aggressive, so speed this up or everything falls apart." That night, Rita read the letter she received from Teresa. A new debt, $200,000 this time. She had 2 weeks to pay or face legal action. Her stepmother was clear. Get him to marry you, get access to the money, or lose everything. Rita felt the walls closing in. Rita was drowning in guilt. Every night when Sean told her how badly he wanted to remember her, she felt shame. What she didn't know was that Sean had been awake in that hospital room. He'd heard every word of her confession, her apology, her guilt, her desperation. He'd known from the beginning that she wasn't Teresa. Sean Michael had his own history with Peter Stephen. 3 years ago, Peter had conned him out of $3 million through fake investment schemes. Sean had spent months trying to track him down. When he'd met Teresa and discovered she was Peter's stepdaughter, Sean had seen an opportunity. Date her, get close to the family, maybe find Peter. He soon learned that even his family had no clues about his whereabouts. Then came the accident. He thought he was dead for a moment. When he woke up in the hospital, Sean had made a choice: fake memory loss, exaggerate his injuries, and test Teresa's character. Would she stay with a disabled man or prove to be as mercenary as her stepfather? A part of him had expected Teresa to abandon him. He hadn't expected a completely different woman to show up claiming to be his fiancée. But instead of exposing Rita immediately, Sean had decided to wait, to watch, to see what their grand plan was. When his investigators had informed him that Rita Stephen was Peter's biological daughter, he had been shocked. In all the time he had known Peter, the man had never mentioned her. He had talked about his wife and one daughter. At first, he was curious. Then slowly, Sean found himself fascinated by her. The real Rita, not the performance. The woman who loved books and treated his staff kindly and felt genuine guilt about what she was doing. He'd started this as a test, but somewhere along the way, it had become something else. He was falling for her. And that complicated everything. 6 weeks in, and Sean was still pretending to not know the truth. Rita was approaching her breaking point. Her stepmother was pressuring her about the wedding. The creditors were calling daily. Someone had rumored that her father was dead. Now all those he owed were trying to collect on their debts quickly, before there was nothing left. Rita used some of the money Sean had given her for new dresses to settle some of the debt. She believed that paying some would encourage the other creditors to be more patient. The reverse was the case. The hassling only got worse. Her stepmother called on a Friday morning. "What exactly are you waiting for to marry him?" she yelled over the phone. Rita felt herself drowning. Every day with Sean made the guilt worse. Every kindness he showed her was another weight on her conscience. That night at dinner, Sean talked about trust and betrayal and second chances. "Some betrayals can't be recovered from," he said. "The kind that make you question if you ever really knew someone." Rita knew he was right. When the truth came out, and it would, he'd never forgive her. She had to tell him, had to confess before this went any further. But survival instincts were strong, and Rita had been surviving her entire life. The very next day, while they were having a discussion in Sean's study, he asked Rita about their supposed past, something specific about wedding venue discussions. Rita invented an answer, as she always did. Sean's expression didn't change. "I never discussed venues with Teresa. We never got that far." The world stopped. "I know who you are, Rita. I've known since the hospital, since you sat by my bed and apologized to me for what you are about to do." Rita couldn't breathe. You knew? This whole time?" "I heard everything. Your real name, your desperation, all of it." Shock turned to anger. So you've been pretending this whole time at playing me while I was drowning in it. Sean didn't deny it. You do not get to be angry, he said coldly. And he was right. She wasn't an innocent victim. She had deceived him too. At least she had tried. How? Weren't you unconscious that day? Did you even lose your memory? I was sleeping. You were the one who assumed I was unconscious. I was lying. About my memory, when I woke up after the accident, I was disoriented. By the time you came to see me at the hospital, I was already much better. I staged most of it to see what you would do. Rita felt gutted. So, nothing was real. That's not true. The conversations, the library, what's growing between us, that's real. Sean moved closer. I started this as revenge, payback for Teresa trying to trick me. But then I began to fall for you, and everything changed. Rita felt hope, a feeling she hadn't felt since she was a little girl and had believed her father could change. They spoke for hours. She told him everything then, the new debt, the deadline, her stepmother's demands, all the way she was still trapped. Let me help, Sean said when she finished. Let me pay it, not as part of any arrangement, but because it's right. Then you can choose what happens next freely. Why would you do that? She asked. She had learned about the dangers of spontaneous generosity the hard way. Because despite everything, I've fallen for you, and I think you've fallen for me too. Rita couldn't deny it. Instead, she looked away. He stroked her cheek gently, tilting her head slightly so she was looking in his eyes, and said gently, "Then let's start over. Honestly, this time." When Sean said he was going to clear the debts tied to her name, Rita had doubted him. She hadn't argued with him, but she hadn't believed it. So when she learned that Sean's attorneys cleared every debt, she was shocked, scared even. The lawyers advised complete separation from her father after clearing the debts. This meant going public. Rita had to make a statement, letting his lenders know that she was not going to be involved with anything concerning him. Officially cutting her father off hurt more than she thought it would. Sean stood beside her through all of it. The fallout was intense, but manageable. No criminal charges were filed. Rita's name was cleared of her father's sins, even as she owned her own mistakes. And slowly, they rebuilt, this time on truth. They started dating, real dating, dinners and museums and long conversations where neither of them performed. Rita enrolled in school to finish her degree. Sean dealt with his company and his own recovery. They learned to trust each other. 3 months after going public, Sean proposed again. "Marry me, for real this time, because you choose me and I choose you." "Yes," Rita said without hesitation. The wedding was small and perfect, in the church, surrounded by people who actually cared about them. When they exchanged vows, Rita spoke with tears in her eyes, pledging the rest of her life to the man who loved her despite her lies.